Kovacevich. Well, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Emily Wilkins, along with Joe Mathieu.
Yes.
We are joined now by the Chamber of Progress CEO Adam Kovacevich. And talking to us today a little bit about a hearing yesterday, one of the first really that's taken place in Congress on the topic of crypto and cryptocurrency. And Adam, I just want to start off just by getting your impressions from this hearing with lawmakers. What, if any, room is there for federal regulations to come into that crypto space?
Well, this hearing was a big deal. It was the first time we'd seen so many CEOs of leading U.S. crypto companies testify before Congress. And I think it represents a little bit of a recognition of crypto's maturation. Policymakers, members of Congress are very interested in crypto. They asked a lot of probing questions. But I would say that one of the surprising areas of regulation, of agreement between both the witnesses and members of Congress was that we need to have regulation for this space. And right now, unfortunately, regulation of crypto is a bit of an alphabet soup. It's split between agencies like the SEC, the CFTC, the IRS. That's not sustainable. I think you heard, frankly, most of the CEOs pleading with Congress to do something about that. Different companies have different ideas about what that should look like. But if we don't see sort of more sanity in U.S. crypto regulation, we could see some of these players move overseas where other countries, frankly, are moving faster than the United States.
We spent a good deal of time talking about this with Chair Gensler at the SEC considering regulations. There have been a couple of hearings in which lawmakers maybe show they didn't know a heck of a lot about how this works. And that's been a concern as we consider the best way to do this in this sort of one-size-fits-all approach here. Adam, is upsetting some folks. If it's Bitcoin, versus Ether, should those be different rules? And should we be looking at coins as opposed to blockchain? We're not anywhere near answering these questions, are we?
We're not anywhere near answering those questions. You're absolutely right. And I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by how sophisticated the questions were.
They're learning, aren't they?
They're learning, and you got that sense. They were not attacks on the industry, right? The tone of the hearing very much is we want to channel the good. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised to see numerous members of Congress recognize the way in which crypto can provide opportunity for people who've been locked out of the traditional finance system. And in fact, one of the things we've seen, and Pew has found, is that Black and Hispanic voters are actually utilizing crypto at higher rates than white voters. So there's a huge opportunity there. Right now, almost all of the crypto regulatory conversation is about kind of one-off issues as opposed to, look, how should government treat this space holistically? And that's what we need to be doing.
You also heard from the Republicans. I was watching the opening remarks made by the Patrick McHenry, the top-ranking Republican on the House Finance Committee. And he seemed more concerned that there was going to be overregulation, and that was really going to stifle innovation and maybe cut off some good ideas that are emerging in the crypto space. Adam, do you think that that's a legitimate concern? And where do you think Congress shouldn't be going in terms of regulations?
Well, one thing I'm very concerned about right now is that we see with the SEC under Chairman Gensler really mostly an attempt to set rules through suing people or threatening to sue people. He's sued Ripple, he's sued Circle, Uniswap, he's starting to sue Coinbase. These are all some of the leading companies in the crypto space. And there's two problems with that. First, instead of clearly defining rules of the road and then enforcing those rules among companies, they're attempting to set rules through lawsuits, and that doesn't help companies do the right thing. And secondly, it's sort of short-circuiting the debate we need to have about how crypto assets ought to be treated through regulation. Should they be treated like traditional securities? Should they be treated in some other way? And maybe, in trying to prevent the public from abuse and from illicit activity, we take new approaches. And so that's what needs to happen. We need to take a step back from what we're doing right now, which is really focusing on lawsuits as opposed to really setting good rules in place.
Adam, there's also been a debate in Washington about taxing crypto, and that's something that's actually being hashed out right now with the president's social spending plan. Can you have a separate conversation about taxing and a separate conversation about regulation, or does this all need to be one?
No, I think that's part of the conversation. This was a big moment, frankly, about 2 months ago. The bipartisan infrastructure bill was part of it. The way it's paid for is through a tax on crypto assets. And I think in general, most people in the crypto space said that crypto, would say that crypto assets should be taxed, but the way that bill does this is probably a bit overbroad. There's going to be an opportunity to fix that when these rules get to the Treasury Department level. But I will say, if you take a step back, one thing about the way in which this tax provision blew up this fall is that I think it ended up illuminating for members of Congress just how many of their constituents are interested in crypto, who are trying it out, who care about its future, and particularly a lot of younger voters. And so I think, frankly, the fact that you saw such a curious, intrigued attitude on the part of members of Congress yesterday, I think is a direct result of kind of how the tax debate played out over the last 2 months. There's a recognition, a growing recognition by Congress that they really ought to educate themselves on these things that a lot of their constituents are curious about and trying out.
Adam, I really want to go big picture here. I mean, you are seeing Congress now start to get into this issue. It would seem that something that used to sort of be more of a fringe for, people who are interested in it is slowly becoming more and more mainstream. What do you see as the future of crypto in the next 5-10 years?
Well, my organization, Chamber of Progress, actually recently conducted some polling on exactly this question, and there were two big things that jumped out. Really, three big things that jumped out. First, there's a huge age gap, right? You see much more enthusiasm about crypto among younger voters than, say, 40-plus voters. And so I think that if you're a politician who's really interested in kind of getting ahead of the next thing, that's something to keep in mind. Secondly, there's a lot of enthusiasm about the way that crypto provides opportunity to the unbanked, people who've been ignored by big banks. But I got to say, the biggest thing is that right now, most people just don't know enough about cryptocurrency to have an opinion. That's what shows up in our poll. And so I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see more and more policymakers educating themselves just as the public is educating itself. And then really, I think, focusing on regulation that harnesses the good and the potential in the way that this can democratize finance in particular, but also put rules in place that prevent against illicit activity and abuse, the way we do with smart regulation.
Absolutely.
In other spaces as well.
Well, thank you so much to Chamber of Progress CEO Adam Kovacevich. And join me today at 5 p.m. New York time on Sound On. We'll be filling in for Joe Mathieu along with my colleague Jack Fitzpatrick. We'll be joined by New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottenheimer. I'm Emily Wilkins here with Joe Mathieu, and this is Bloomberg.